What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Black Top Podcast. This is episode 47. And man, boys, I know we're feeling good today. Kai Soto will be at Summer League. The Filipino legend.
The greatest legend ever to grace the court.
100%, man.
I think he'll be better than Dirk Nowitzki.
I think he's Dirk Nowitzki reincarnated, man.
I think more, man. I think he might take Giannis' spot on
Oh,
Milwaukee.
yeah, 100%. Give me all that.
I don't know.
Christian's silent because he's just so excited.
I am excited.
He's like, hey, who's Kai Soto?
Yo, shut. I know. Yo, man. I'm Filipino too, man.
All the Filipinos know the legend, man.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna get drafted. Clearly, I was wrong. No, but it's been a good past few days in terms of things that have been going around the league. We obviously just had the draft, which is exciting. And let's just get right into it. So obviously we're going to talk about the draft later on, but we got to get into these trades. First one we're going to start off with the first big bomb that got dropped, the Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns trade. So just so y'all know, we're going to break it down to where obviously because Washington's involved in the majority, if not all of these trades, we're going to just go by the other teams first. And at the very end, we're going to, kind of compress Washington into all just one big section. But let's start off here. Bradley Beal to the Suns. So they acquire obviously Bradley Beal, Jordan Goodwin, and G League Ignite alum Isaiah Todd. So, just throw out some general ways y'all are feeling. For me, I think it's cool for now, but I think evidently when the bullets start flying in playoff basketball, I think the depth is something that's going to bite them. A big thing I've been saying is, the big three is going to combine for 100+ points, but then everybody else is going to give up 120 or something along those lines. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I think at first I was like, this trade really doesn't help them because I think where they struggled the most last season was the lack of depth. And that's still a major hole to address this coming off season. But when you can turn Chris Paul, who's barely been able to stay healthy over the last couple of years, and Landry Shamet into Bradley Beal in terms of player commodity, like you have to be pretty happy if you're a Phoenix Suns fan. So I think Bradley Beal and even though his contract is pretty ugly, you have him long term in his prime. So I think there's a lot to like there. I would also say in terms of the draft capital that they gave up on top of the fact, like the Phoenix Suns don't control their draft selections up until the 2031st, right? And so that makes it really hard to make any further deals later on. And like, this team is probably going to run its course in about 3 or 4 years, right? Considering how long KD and Bradley Beal are under contract and Devin Booker's next contract. So they don't control their draft rights till 2031, man. So that's kind of crazy that this team is really hampering their future to try and go all in on a championship this year.
Yeah, man. If there's one thing Matt Ishbia has, it's balls. What are you thinking, Chin?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat as Ruben. I mean, I think like the other thing that I think they struggled with during the playoffs, and you saw it in the Denver series, is giving up points, like not being able to really slow down any teams. And I think adding a star specifically like Bradley Beal just kind of adds fire to that flame because at least when Chris Paul was on the floor with that team, he was actually defensively contributing to, the structure of the defense and making sure everyone was tight. But I feel like Bradley Beal is obviously a score first shooting guard, and I don't really know how that's going to translate to better defense in any sense. So I do think it's a good, like, I think Ruben makes a good point of how it's like when you really think about what they turned Chris Paul into a Bradley Beal situation, like that's definitely a great situation to be in. Like I'm sure there's moves that they can make if it all, goes to shit, but I don't think it's going to move the needle for them to win the championship is what I'd say.
Good point. I think last thing I'll add is I think for Bradley Beal, we're going to see a bit of a regression in the sense of scoring, but I think there's an argument to be made that I think he was better when he was playing alongside John Wall. I think when he had the keys, you saw like how this team peaked. It was they got swept. No, I think they got one game against Philly that one year they were playing him, but I think we're gonna see him go back to a bit of a more tertiary, secondary role. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, because with that, when you're not pouring so much into the offense, I think it's gonna allow your defensive game to take an uptick. So I think there's a little bit of silver lining there. Jordan Goodwin's another guy who really, showcased his chops
Yeah.
last year. Isaiah Todd, I think, is kind of like a Darius Baisley thing, where young guy, but probably not even really going to touch the floor. But I think when you consider, again, there's maybe 4 guys under contract, so that's the big 3, and I think like Ish Wainwright. Seeing how the rest of this roster is going to get filled out, definitely one of the more bigger topics to look at in the offseason. But I think we didn't even mention it. DeAndre Ayton, I think, is for sure. We're all in agreement he's getting traded, right? I think once we see what that deal looks like is when we can maybe have more of a comprehensible sense of how this trade's going to look, just because, again, on paper, when you have those 3 guys, it's a good thing to look at. But then when it's like the hoopty, maybe on the outside it's all polished and good, but then when you get on the inside, it's looking a little rough.
Yeah, this I don't know, man. Something about Phoenix to me feels like they have all the talent in the world, but I just don't think Kevin Durant's at the level anymore that you can really safely call this a superstar big 3 either.
Oh,
I just don't think Kevin Durant is at that level anymore. I don't think he has the same impact um, on the floor as he used to. Like obviously during the seasons when he was with Golden State and before that in Oklahoma City. Um, it's just simply because he's older now, right? Like it's really hard to rely on a 34 or 5-year-old guy
I mean,
to
this
carry.
this past year he took an uptick defensively, I will say.
I mean, he did. He definitely did. But like, you can't rely on that long term, especially this year coming. Like,
Yeah.
especially at his age, I just think. I think the Bradley Beal deal will help alleviate some of the pressure that Kevin Durant is typically known to have to carry too. So, I mean, having a big 3 is nice, but again, like you said, DeAndre Ayton, what they do with that and how they fill out their roster. Where I think we were talking about this the other pod, where it's like if you can get some sort of defensive big and some sort of playmaker, you stretch the value of DeAndre Ayton into 2 solid players. I think you've put yourself in a position to be successful. Um, so I don't know what that looks like though, and I don't know where that's going to come from. That's the interesting part for me because it seems like a lot of teams are calling for Ayton, but I don't think they have the assets to satisfy what Phoenix would ultimately need and fit.
Yeah, I feel that 100%. All right, let's move on to this next one. Chris Paul got traded for Jordan Poole, Ryan Rollins, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. along with 2 picks. How about Christian? You start us off here with the Warriors side of the things.
With the Warriors side of the things,
Yeah.
I mean, I like it for the Warriors that they free up all the cap that Jordan Poole was eventually going to take up. I think he played himself out of his contract this year, honestly. In some ways, obviously, Jordan Poole has those bright light moments, and that's why he got paid the way he did previous season. But I am happy to see that the Warriors are choosing to move on from him because I think it means that they want to still be competitive. I think Jordan Poole didn't really allow for them to figure out what their situation is. So I think it's a more graceful for like what their next plan is for the next few years as opposed to like years ahead. And I think they still have players to rely on in terms of development. Obviously, like Cum Bucket. Fuck, I'm forgetting his real name right now.
Kaminga?
Why am
Come bucket.
Damn.
For anyone that's
That's
watching,
crazy. I
for
can
anyone that's
imagine, yo, you
watching,
clip that out of context, yo. Come bucket.
for anyone watching this right now, we're recording in the morning. It's a little different,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's why. All right, fucking
That's
Cum Bucket.
hilarious.
All right, yeah, but yeah. I mean, like I think in terms of what it looks like, I think we were talking about how this is kind of like a D'Angelo Russell situation similar to the Warriors, where they hold on to Chris Paul until something does become available. Yeah, I don't see him actually playing the whole season out, but I don't know what that looks like. I think they do try to hopefully re-sign Draymond.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know what Chris Paul translates into. Possibly another center, but
I think that'd be
yeah,
best case scenario. Yeah, I think on that note of Draymond, I think that's essentially what this trade boiled down to. You know, we all know what
Maybe the
happened.
direction.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think it's to the point now where, you always hear people say, "Oh, that's a normal thing in the locker room." But I think that's also in the context of that it doesn't get broadcasted to everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
I think the second that punch got thrown, the writing was on the wall that Jordan Poole wasn't going to finish it out with the Golden State Warriors, in my opinion. And I'll say it like this, man. The king very well might be dead. Depending on what happens this offseason, this is perhaps arguably the most important offseason in this dynasty's history. Because, I mean, you gave up your one guy that's kind of played a solid role in terms of showing that he could be one of the guys to take on the mantle of the Golden State Warriors. And now you're left with Chris Paul. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think questioning his fit. I don't know if y'all have seen like the RDC skit where like the guys keep passing to him, if they're saying like that's gonna be him and Draymond. Not saying it's gonna be like that, but I do think there's a little bit of like tinkering that's gonna need to be done on Steve Kerr's part. But yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Christian though. I've also read that it's more a placeholder and they're looking for another deal before Chris Paul's money gets guaranteed. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I think this move just was something that needed to be done on the, what's the word I'm looking for? More on the camaraderie side, I think, than like actual play.
Yeah. I've actually read differently. I've read that they're gonna be bringing him onto their roster this year,
Oh,
so that he'll be a part of from at least from what Chris Haynes reported. So I mean, if we're talking about basketball fit, I actually think he fits, and the reason why is Chris Paul is also still a fairly solid perimeter shooter. But I think what he does is we've seen Steph at his best when he plays with a really good secondary creator, and Jordan Poole is a good shot creator, but he's not necessarily a playmaker. Right, but we've seen in past seasons when he's played with, like, you can go all the way back to like 2013 when he played with Jared Jack, he played with the Sean Livingstons of the world. Um, Steph has always been at his best when he plays with another great playmaker on the floor, whether that's Draymond or even somebody else. And I think Chris Paul is going to allow Steph to be off the ball more, where I think he's actually much more dangerous because there requires so much. Like, I don't think we've ever we look at like how Steph has changed the game. Like, I don't think we've ever seen like defensive attention change to someone who's not even who doesn't even have the ball in their hand. Like, that for me is insane.
hmm.
Like, I mean, we've seen it in the past with Ray Allen and Reggie Miller, but to the level of gravity that Steph requires off the ball is just insane. Because like, if you screw up this back screen, your whole defense is in limbo. And I think Chris Paul is so good at being able to manipulate defenses. Like, I think the fit is really good. And I think and the fit between CP and Draymond is actually really good too, because Draymond is a really good screener. And I remember reading this, like, I think the short roll, pick and roll between Chris Paul and Draymond is going to be really great because you can't, when in a Chris Paul pick and roll, you can't, if you blitz him, he's going to make the pass. If you go under, he's going to shoot. Oftentimes what teams are going to do is they're going to hedge and show, which allows Draymond to get the ball because teams are willing to leave him. But in the short rule, we all know Draymond is so good, like right in the paint area when he gets the ball, he's so good at making a play, even though like his percentages at the rim are like probably ass for a guy who should be so much better.
Hmm.
But it's like he's going to find the open guy, and that's why I feel like the fit is really good for Chris Paul. And he won't be required to play 30 plus minutes a night. Like, he could go out there, play 22 to 25 minutes, like alleviate Steph's time. I think that also helps a guy like Clay and Andrew Wiggins also. So if they plan on keeping CP, I think it's a great fit. Obviously, you guys said it still doesn't address the need, which is like they need an actual traditional big or somebody who can stretch the floor and has length on the defensive end. But I really like the fit. I think it works perfect if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. Because I think every time we think about Chris Paul in the vacuum of like he doesn't necessarily show up, I think that's when he's got like a big role. And here I think he's going to be a little alleviated, which would be good for in terms of like him being able to stay
Yeah,
on the court and all that, which
yeah.
I like that.
I would
Yeah.
say put some money down on Chris Paul winning six man this year.
You think he's going to be Actually,
I
yeah,
would
the
put
way they
money down
line
on him
up,
as
he
six man
would
of the year.
oh,
Yeah, I
might
would say
have
put some
to.
money down right now. If he doesn't get dealt again, because I mean that's also very like possible that they wait for the guarantee to come in, they ship him off to somewhere else.
Yeah. Let's see.
Like the Lakers for Mo Bamba and
Oh
Malik
my
Beasley and
oh,
wow, Mo Bamba starting center for the
oh man.
Golden State Warriors.
Man, Mama, he's got a song named after him. Pretty good
imagine him
song.
starting for the Warriors though? That'd be insane.
I'm not gonna lie. If we're getting like the Mo Bamba, that's the reason he got drafted 7th or whatever it was. Could be a nice little restoration project. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
You know.
He
Oh
can shoot
man,
the three.
the more you say it, the more I'm kind of intrigued by that. But
Yeah.
moving on to here. Let's talk about the KP trade. So obviously, you know, Boston. I think they got to win now. 100%. Because after this year, KP is probably gone. And then obviously there's still that question of Jaylen Brown's extension. But I mean, I think the Celtics, this was overall, Brad Stevenson does some beautiful GMing here. You know, able to get KP, giving up, I know Marcus Smart is obviously the heart and soul of it. But I think in totality of what this team's been able to accomplish in terms of what they've been able to get out of a guy like Derek White, it's somewhat minimized. And then now you're getting a guy who, I get KP's always had that kind of can't stay healthy bug, that kind of rhetoric around his name or whatever it may be. But he played like 65 games last year. So that's like, I think, pretty good for a guy with his kind of history. But I think more than anything, I'm excited to see a defensive duo of like Rob Will and KP. I think obviously Rob Will's been kind of the anchor for that defense for this past couple of years. But now you got a guy like KP who is able to hold down the paint. And now I think you're going to get Robert Williams in his more natural position in terms of being like kind of like a free safety. And then also I think it's going to be good for Jason Tatum because I think he'll be able to be a full-time 3. And then with the fact that they're losing their starting point guard, I think one, obviously Derek White slots into there, but then two, I think we could maybe see some Jason Tatum point guard minutes. But yeah, overall, I think this was a great trade.
Shouldn't take it home, man.
Yeah.
It's your squad.
No, yeah, I think it was maybe the right move, like in terms of actually moving the needle for this team. Just because I think the biggest hole in the Celtics game probably was the reliance on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in terms of scoring. And KP, I think, is like an understated player when it comes to actually making his own shot and getting points on the board. He obviously gets it done. And then yeah, I think as much as I did love Marcus Smart being sort of that like glue guy for the team, I think people like Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon are like perfect fits to just slot back in. Malcolm Brogdon showed why he could deserve to also be a starting point guard again from this
He
previous
almost
season.
was for the Clippers.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
almost was for Phil Port.
So I wouldn't be even be surprised if it's like a thing where Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon are like constantly switching between, being slotted into that certain point guard role. But I just think in general they have a lot more to work with now, having another big. I think that was like the biggest thing they needed to address. And I thought honestly they were going to address it in the previous trade deadline, not fucking adding Blake Griffin. That didn't do shit. But yeah, I'm pretty happy about this one. It'll be sad to see Marcus Smart go, but I think the team will be better.
Good point. Anything to add, Ruben?
The only thing that I'm worried about with Boston is they still don't have a real playmaker. And this team played a lot of 1-on-5 last year. And I think JB and Tatum are gonna really enjoy the pick and pop game because they never really had a true offense. I think in the time that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have been in Boston, they haven't had a real threat for the big man. Like Al Horford is good, but at the level of
He was still
Kristaps
very
Porzingis currently,
passive. Yeah.
exactly. I think Kristaps is going to be a nice change for the dynamic of the team. But again, I think that's where Marcus Smart, I think, is going to be missed because this says a lot about Boston. But I think he was the best passer on that team, and he's not the best playmaker in the league. Like, but when it comes to his ability to create shots for others, but like he was their best passer. So I think that's a level of something that needs to be addressed, whether that's Peyton Pritchard finding way. And I think that's what the Marcus Smart trade does is probably opens up a new role for Peyton Pritchard, which I believe was talked about all season that he would leave or he wanted to
I think he requested a
be
trade a
dealt.
while back.
Yeah, especially if he was if his role wasn't to be increased. So that'll be interesting to see. I think Peyton Pritchard's actually a huge winner in this if he's utilized correctly. But I think that's what they're missing still is like some real playmaking to get everybody set up. So I think they're also a dark horse for Chris Paul. I would just say that.
And don't forget that they lost their biggest shot maker when it comes to last second shots, Marcus Smart.
Yeah. Yeah. He's so many big shots over his career.
Man, on a team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, losing your biggest shot
sad.
maker.
Yeah. It's kind of sad, but like I said, new identity now for Boston. But I think this puts them as a favorite in the East for sure.
Yeah.
People don't like it as much as I do, but I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think considering you retain the big man depth, I think is a big thing here too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hoping that those guys are able to hold up. Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the rest of it. I think there's definitely still some moves to be made, but Boston off to a good start for sure. All right, Ruben, hit us with your think of the other side though, with Marcus Smart going to Memphis.
Oh, I'm a big fan. I think like they I looked at it like this. You take Dylan Brooks out, you put Marcus Smart in, that's a massive upgrade. Like,
no doubt.
just ability to defend multiple positions. He can play make as well. He plays bigger than his size. Obviously, not a great perimeter shooter, but he can hit the open shot, which is important. I think what's going to be underrated is his locker room presence, especially for that team. And I almost feel like this is exactly why they made a trade for Marcus Smart and included first round picks for that, because of the fact that Marcus Smart is going to be a huge influence, on this locker room, especially this young team, because they lack a guy who can tell. I think he's the kind of guy that can go into that locker room and tell Ja Morant to sit down. Right. So I feel like that's a massive that's a massive part of this deal. And I really like it for Memphis. In terms of like I think they'll always be a top 3-4 team as long as that team sticks around. Granted, I know Ja's out for 25 games to start next year. So let's see how that works. But for me, I think this is a huge like change for Memphis in terms of their culture, especially. I really like what he does on the floor, but I think off the court, you're going to see more value there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big thing I was looking at too. I will say though, I think like you alluded to with Ja's suspension, I think the one thing that would give a little pushback on is the fact that we're not really get to see his true role until Ja gets back. And then on top of that, that's like the actual meshing together process. So, I think heading into this year, I think they can still be one of the top teams in the West, but I think next year is really when you're going to start to see like them pick up some crazy steam, especially if you got guys like Desmond Bane continuing to progress, Ja obviously hopefully getting back on track, Jaren Jackson Jr., maybe Zaire Williams can even like come back into form. There's still a lot of upside with this team. And I think if anything, yeah, like you said, Ruben, the culture is really like the big thing you're looking at in this trade. 100%. Anything to add, Christian?
Sorry, I thought I was muted. No, I got nothing to add. I kind of agree on the other half, and this is the why I think I'll miss Marcus Smart so much because he was like I'd say 75% of the defensive identity that was the Boston Celtics. Obviously, Rob Williams and everyone else for that matter plays a big part, but it all started with Marcus Smart. So that's going to be a hole to fill, I think, on the Boston Celtics side. Like they get much better offensively, and they fill a role they need, but they lose like a culture setter really. So
Yeah, can I say a really hot piece of that?
Oh,
Like the amount of heart and soul that they lost in Marcus Smart, like is going I think will affect Boston in some way. KP is really good, but that dude has nothing close to the same heart and soul that Marcus Smart has.
yeah,
So
I
I
don't
mean that's
even
that's something that can't be
who I
replaced too.
don't you don't even know who really becomes like because I think every team needs a guy who can yell at like the best players,
Yeah,
and I don't think Boston really has that anymore. So
unless it's Al Horford, but like I think Al
true,
Horford is Al Horford. So
true. He ain't got that dog.
not
But
like Marcus Smart, man.
we got through all of that. Let's talk about the Wizards end of things. So they've been able to turn KP and Bradley Beal into, I'm going to start with the actual solid rotational guys. Jordan Poole, the greatest shooting guard of all time, Landry Shamet, and Tyus Jones. And then you also got guys like Ryan Rollins, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Mike Muscala, Danilo Gallinari, Julian Phillips, who just got drafted, 1 first rounder, and 7 seconds. So just to start things off, I think for me, in a vacuum, it sucks. But with context, like how Ruben mentioned last week, and the fact that they're, one is arguably the worst contract in the NBA right now, and then 2 in his expiring deal, it still kind of sucks. But I think it's a high risk, high reward kind of trade. You've secured, I wouldn't say an interesting, a good or bad backcourt, but it's an intriguing one. You got one of the most conservative point guards. We all know Tyus Jones takes care of the ball, leader in assist to turnover ratio. And then you're also pairing with one of the most reckless. And I think it's a
That's a way to put it right there, man.
yeah, man. You know what I'm saying?
Holy.
But I will say the blueprint and the foundation they have, it's decent. I'm not gonna lie, because you look at it like this. You potentially have a starting lineup of Tyus, Jordan Poole, Corey Kispert, Denny Avdia, and Daniel Gafford. I think it's not good, it's not bad, it's mid. But it's like higher upwards mid than like ass mid. And then you also got a bunch of guys like Bilal Coulibaly, who they just drafted.
Yeah.
And then, maybe Jordan Davis, the Taco Bell man, can finally start playing some solid NBA minutes. So, I think the main thing though, I'll put it like this. You guys like the reckless thing? Jordan Poole is gonna play with the training wheels off, and I think his counting stats are gonna reflect that. Now it's just a matter of if those counting stats are more fluff versus if like it's translating to something tangible. So, I think it's not what you would want, especially considering the markets that like guys like Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert set for their positions. But I think it's better than what it could have been, I think. Especially looking at how it started with the Bradley Beal trade. But yeah.
Yeah, I think at least on the Wizards side, I personally love the backcourt. And I think one thing we forgot to mention is they get 6 draft swaps. So I believe they get the best out of those 6 the next 6 years.
Yeah. But I mean, let's be real here. Outside of maybe like the late round ones, those they'll still keep their own pick.
Yeah, for sure they'll keep their own pick, but I think that control is nice because
Definitely.
if I'm not mistaken, the swaps came from Phoenix, right?
Yeah, like if anything,
So
2028 and 2030 could be
exactly.
like big swing years.
Those are big swing years for sure. I think those are absolutely going to be top picks, and I don't think they're protected either.
No.
They're just outright swaps. So I think that's great for them. But knowing that Washington doesn't have a whole lot of draft capital coming into it. They haven't drafted very well either. Like, let's be real here. Like, Washington kind of put themselves in that position drafting the guys they did. So I'm not going to sit here and say Denny Avdia is a trash bag or anything like that, but like people were calling him Luca. Let's just sit here.
Forgot about that.
Let's just sit here and sink in with that for a second. So, like, they haven't drafted well. It's a solid deal for Washington, like you mentioned. I don't think there's much to add for me. I really like the backcourt though. Tyus Jones and Jordan Poole. One guy's gonna be turning the ball over 10 times, shooting 35% from the field, while the other dude's gonna have an assist to turnover ratio of like 12. So like that's gonna be fun.
Nah, no doubt. What were you, Jin?
Yeah, I got nothing to add. I think it's just good they got everything off their plate and can finally start new.
Yeah.
I think a fresh restart's a good thing.
Yeah, they've been in the trenches for like I don't even know how many years now. Like they've been in the trenches ever since John Wall left. Really,
Yeah,
like,
shit ain't been sweet
honest.
since he hit the ducky.
And I think that's a solid fucking like 6 years. Like feels like I don't know. Like John Wall 2017, 2018. Like does that line up when Russell Westbrook got traded?
That sounds about the year.
Yeah, that's a long ass.
Oh no,
time.
I think it was later because I think Russ was still on. Oh no, you're right. Because Chris Paul was in Oklahoma City in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, or 2020.
I don't know the timeline to be honest.
Yeah,
but either way, they were in basketball poverty for a fat ass minute, and they still are. But at least at least now they're being given a way out of it. Yeah,
100%. Man, those Bradley Beal and John Wall teams were so much fun.
They were so much fun, but they could never get out of the second round.
Oh well, yeah, because they always
ran into Paul Pierce for a year.
Yeah. Do you remember? You remember what Draymond said to him?
I was like, oh yeah. They're like, they don't come here for you. They think it was retirement tour.
You thought you was Kobe?
You thought you was Kobe?
I think that's like
was Kobe.
That's like a top 5 all-time mic'd up moment.
I hate Paul Pierce, man. Like, side note, I'm sorry. I hate that guy. Did you guys see him on the like when he was like just straight up crunk?
Yeah, KG. I bet you KG wanted to tell him to like shut his mouth.
Shut up. But yeah,
like,
I'm pretty sure KG wanted to smack him upside the head. If I was KG, I would have done it right there. He's like, hey, I got the website. You can get girlfriends for a day.
Oh man.
Did you not see that?
Yeah, I mean, this all started. You remember how he lost his job at ESPN or wherever it was?
Yeah, because he had the strippers in the background.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh my god,
man.
Bro, that was so funny. Hey man, I got this. I got this website. You can get girlfriends for a day, and then like introduced him like it was nothing to KG. It's like,
that's Inglewood's own, Mr. Hall of Famer.
Oh, Inglewood, I'm sorry. I don't want no trouble. I apologize, Inglewood. I apologize. I don't want no trouble.
Hey, I don't even know if they're claiming Paul Pierce anymore. But that's all to say. Washington, could be a fun season. Maybe. Okay, do you guys think they get over 30 wins?
I think they could just about hit it, maybe, if at best.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm about. I think they're due for like a 27 to 33 kind of season. But anyways, getting out of all the trades, the draft happened. What was this? So this Saturday, 2 days ago. And man, all that hype just to, obviously we knew how that first pick was going to go. But instead of just going like pick for pick for pick for pick, let's start here. Ruben, man, you love that dick?
We love Dick. We love Dick. Yo, Grady Dick is such a sick pickup. Like I was not expecting him to be. I remember saying this in like 2 or 3 podcasts ago, where I said, if there's a prospect that I really like Grady Dick is one of them. I'm really interested in him, seeing how he plays. But I did not think I think you were asking DJ like, oh, who are some guys that you're gonna look forward to this draft outside of Wemby? I mentioned Grady Dick. I did not expect him to drop to Toronto. I am so happy because number one, Toronto was 28th in 3-point shooting last season. And then now they just drafted the best 3-point shooter in the draft with the same shot profile as Tyler Hero had in Kentucky. So I think that's really exciting, his growth. I think in the NBA, though, I think he'll translate more to a Klay Thompson style player, where I think off the ball, he's going to find a lot of success. But I think his length, his size, and his athleticism for a 6'8" white dude is really exciting. White man can jump. The dude can play for sure. Yeah, I think he's got some really. I think he's got some really good.
Yeah, I've
potential
seen him catch
for-
I've seen him catch a body or two on a putback.
Bro, yeah, dude. Like I can't remember what dunk it was against, but man, when he cocked it back, when that dick cocked it back, and then sorry, yo, man, I think he's at the next level. I think he has really good potential for 3-level scoring. And I'm really excited to see. Like I said, I think he'll translate more to Klay Thompson. I think, um, especially off DHOs with Scotty Barnes, that's gonna be fun to watch. Especially with Pascal, I think him and Pascal are gonna have a really nice 2-man game. From what I understand, the Pascal's looking to stay long term. So, Grady Dick is such a great pick, man. Like it's not much for me to say other than the fact that everybody was completely shocked that he fell to 13. So,
Yeah, because I
guess
think
people
most
don't-
mocks had him going to where Jet Howard went at like 11.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there were some rumblings that he would go top 10. So, the fact that he fell to 13, pretty damn happy. And side note, we also signed Marquise Noel to a two-way contract.
Hey man, I was watching K-State during the tourney. Oh, that dude's a dog.
That dude is a dog, man. I think they literally just drafted Fred VanVleet, like,
Yeah.
except I think he's much more.
He's definitely
I think
smaller.
he's much better. He's definitely smaller, but I think he's much better at getting to the rim. There's a level of playmaking that he has that I think Fred kind of had to develop into coming into the league because I think Fred's more of a shooting guard. But anyways,
Well, you know,
I think Toronto had a great draft.
Marquise is an NY kid, I believe. So,
Yeah.
you know he's tough. But yeah,
He's at Rucker like 3 times a week.
Oh yeah. I will say though, I like the dick pick, but had to slide that one in there. Know what I'm saying? But
Yeah, what a great dick pic.
I personally prefer Jordan Hawkins when you look at like the shooters coming to this draft. I think Grady Dick gives you great size, obviously, but I like Jordan Hawkins a little more. I will say, I think he's in another great
Yeah.
situation. But when you just think about, coming out of UConn, he's training with Ray Allen. His
Mhm.
3-pointers are already like super sound. So I think those two guys are going to be the guys we're looking at. Like these guys can like definitely hit the shot day one, not even without any
Yeah.
shadow of the doubt. So I think it's just like you're just grasping at shots at this point. But I mean,
Yeah.
the size that he gives, I think he can definitely develop more of an in-between game, given his like little spurts of athleticism that he showcased at Kansas. But yeah, I mean, do you see him being able to take over like a starting role, or do you think he'll be more of like a bench guy for this first year?
I think that all depends on Fred and Pascal's situation.
Mm.
If Pascal does not get traded, but from what I've read multiple times is that he has not committed to signing anywhere long term except for Toronto and Fred. And I think if Fred is gone, I think you're actually looking at Scotty playing the full point. And I think they slide Grady Dick at 3. They could potentially play Pascal at 4, and then Jakob at 5. Gary Trent or OG probably will start as well. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I think there's still like a lot of limbo in that roster, but Grady Dick I think will eventually pan out to be a starting role player. Side note, I forgot to add, I think the difference between him and Jordan Hawkins, I think, is the second level of play is outside of the shooting. What can they do? And I think Grady Dick is overall a better rebounder. I think defensively is where he still kind of struggles. His IQ on that end, but I think that's something that you can fix over time and learn at the next level. His size, like you mentioned, but I think he's also a really great playmaker off the dribble. And there's been a lot of moments where he's stuck in limbo, and I think he's able to create off the dribble as well. So I think that's the biggest difference. Jordan Hawkins was high on my list as well at 13, along with Keontae George and
Oh yeah.
there was another Nick Smith Jr. Potentially Casey Wallace, but he went earlier. I would have loved to have Casey Wallace, but yeah, I think it was a. I don't think there's been a time where there's a draft, or at least for Toronto, where you select the best player available that is also a massive fit. And it's typically you choose one or the other when you're drafting outside of the top 5, right? It's literally like you're picking the best player available. If you're further down the draft, you pick based on fit. And sometimes the best player available might be there at 20, like OG was back in his draft. But I love the Grady Dick pick because, again, fit, best player available, everything you needed, A plus draft.
And he might have the lucky number 13 on his side. You never know.
Yeah, I think lucky number 13. I think he just got number 00 actually.
Oh no, his draft position, brother.
Oh, okay,
Think
yeah.
about all the guys that have been there.
Oh yeah, who's that? Tyler, Devin Booker,
Kobe.
Yeah.
I think D Mitch
Kobe
went
was
13.
13, eh? Did he go 13 to you?
Kobe? Yeah, Kobe
Let's
went
see,
13th to the Hornets, I believe.
Yeah, I thought he was 15. I think about something else.
Man.
Dude, Karl Malone. Yo, listen to this one. Tyler Hansbrough.
Oh, dog.
Listen to this
Dog.
one. Thabo Cephalosha.
Oh, he played a game in Air Max, so
Oh.
that's a dog.
Yeah.
Hey, he had moments, right?
Who else they had? I'm just looking back. Jalen Rose. Actually, I mean Karl Malone. I don't know why this is showing me like 2013. Bruh. Yeah, Tyler Hero, Jalen Duren, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, Zach LaVine, Kelly Olynyk.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good draft spot.
13's a good spot.
Yo, I'll say a name you guys haven't heard in a while. Corey Maggette.
Oh, Corey Maggette was cold.
Yeah, he was cold.
Oh my
had
goodness.
bigger shoulders than Desmond Bane's head.
No doubt. Oh my lord. That dude was massive. Moving on from there though, Dick pick, Dick in the 6, whatever you want to pick.
Dick in the 6.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Dick in the 6. Dick in the 6.
Oh man, the Drake bars are gonna be. Mwah.
Oh, yo, you're right.
The Drake bars are going to be insane.
Gonna say some sus shit for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yo, did you ever see that? Like, side note, did you ever see that video where Drake said if like Jason Momoa came out the water, he'd give him a kiss?
I did not, but I would not put that past Drake. We're talking about a guy who said 21. Can you do something for me? All the edits, all the Drake's a character, I'll say that.
Oh man.
Canada's very own.
Canada, stand up.
Moving on from there, I mean, just to quickly touch on it, just so that all our teams get some shine. I'm not gonna lie, Christian. Who? You're a Tatum fan, but like, who's like your team?
Who's my team in this draft?
Overall.
Oh, okay, let's just clear the air. By association, it is the Celtics because of Jason Tatum. I think I've been a long-standing, like, casual Raptors fan, honestly, not because of the championship, because my Lola used to watch Raptors like every day. And then I would say Golden State's also up there because of playing 2K like with you at
True. I remember those days.
At fucking 12 years old, like,
yeah.
And that was before they were good, like Curry and
that was a cool
team.
I think that was like 2K13. That was a cool team.
Yeah. Curry was like an 83 rated player, right? I've been around for a minute.
True.
But I would say those are honestly the teams I like keep up with the most. I also like to keep up with OKC. I like to see what they do, but yeah, I gotta say it's still the Celtics for the most part.
Who did the Celtics even draft this one?
I believe
I
they
think
traded their draft.
they
Yeah.
traded majority of, I think they got, I don't even know. Whatever. We'll pass on that for now, I guess. But
No, yeah, it's not worth talking about.
looking to
they got
the
Jordan
Bucks.
Walsh at 38.
Jordan Walsh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Jordan
he's a good
Walsh.
wiry wing, nice size.
Yeah.
But I look into the Bucks though. I think we just drafted two guys. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed because I think at 35 you had a guy like Maxwell Lewis sitting right there. That would have been a beautiful pick. Because I think these two guys that the Bucks drafted are very much project players, and that's not to say that they can't be good, but I think when you're just looking at the timeline and the fact that it's very much you got to win as much as you can in the next maybe 3-5 years at most, it's a little questionable. I mean, Andre Jackson Jr., he's a guy that's coming from, championship pedigree, just won with UConn, big energy guy from everything I've read and seen, but just can't really hit too many shots. Chris Livingston, I think, is much of the same thing where we just got we got two guys I think are very good defensively, but now it's just about, the offensive game and if it can catch up. But moving on from there, let's throw out some teams that y'all think won the draft.
Oh, Houston.
Mm,
Houston.
Yes.
I agree.
Cam Whitmore dropping at 20 is insane. Cam Whitmore's dropping. I know that there is a lot of clearly a lot of worry, whether it was his interviews, like his pre-draft stuff and his injuries, but like that dude was top 10. So like the fact he dropped 10 spots,
I wanted him to go to a team like Detroit or Indiana.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I think like Amon Thompson, number 4, I don't think there's much to like. Great player, big time. I'm really excited about watching him. And Cam Whitmore dropping to 20. I think they won the draft outside of San Antonio.
I feel that. Yeah, I mean, when you get 2 top 10 talents, that's definitely a big W. And I think Ime Udoka is a guy that I would trust to like. I don't know if control is the right word I want to use, but he'll be able to, I think, get a hold of that situation very well. For me, I'm gonna throw out Dallas. Because, I think you got 2 solid players that are perfect fits. Derek Lively the second, obviously. An athletic big man with an unproven, but I think definitely viable shooting touch. And, another Canadian man, Olivier Maxence Prosper. Ooh, love that dude. Low maintenance guy who competes. I think that's a good switch up from a lot of the shot chuckers that Dallas has on their roster. Jaden Hardy's a guy I'm still high on, but I'm not depending on him to grab me a crucial rebound. Tim Hardaway Jr., he was one of my favorite prospects when he was coming out of Michigan, but he's just there to shoot. And to make matters even better for the Dallas Mavericks, I mean, who do y'all think who do you think Prosper got compared to?
What do you get compared to? Well, he's a perimeter shooter, right? So
he's a perimeter shooter, but he's a guy that that's a very he's very competitive defensively.
Oh, Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah,
is that what he got?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's both. It's both a good comp and it's definitely the sizzle that sold that steak. And yeah, I mean, when you look at Dallas, I think they've become. I think there's just this big stigma in terms of you got to compete right away. And I'm not necessarily saying that's wrong, but I also think we're at a point where Luka's still so young to the point where you can take these guys that, could be more fringe rotational players now and eventually take a Josh Green level jump. We've seen what Jaden Hardy is probably about to do in this second year. So I think Dallas is a team that, given their lack of assets, I think we're really, really viable this draft.
Yeah, I mean, they managed to also burn off Davis Bertans too, right? So, I like how that they got Lively. I'm excited to see him in the pick and roll because I think he's a defensive anchor, which is what they needed. He's also a guy that can finish at the rim, so I'm excited about lobs. There's going to be an opportunity for him to catch lobs. And if Kyrie stays, man, I think like that. I think that he's going to be a big go getter, and I think he's a guy. Even though he averaged only 5 and 5 in college, I think he's a guy that will contribute right away on the defensive end, which is exactly what they need. So I don't think they're going to ask him to step up and be a 15 and 10 guy and 3 blocks. Like they're going to ask him to come in, defend at a high level, rebound at a high level, get it off the glass, get your own, and pick and roll. So I think fit is really good for Dallas. I'm a big fan of their draft.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie though. I could definitely see him being like, I think if everything goes perfectly, like comes in, meshes perfectly, if everything's on like the right side, I wouldn't put it past him to have like something along those lines. Maybe not necessarily 15 and 10, but I could see like a good, 12 and 7, 1.5 blocks kind of year. Because I mean, I feel like Luka's the kind of guy where it's going to be a Jokic kind of effect to where he's going to make the game a lot easier for guys.
Yeah.
Whether it's the gravity, the playmaking. Guy like Derek Lively, you got 2 guards that have no problem throwing oops. So I think he's a guy that's going to be really, really beneficial and could be a sleeper for like a potential all rookie team.
I was just gonna say that because I think he's in the best situation for all rookie team. Like,
yeah,
he's one of the best situations for that.
How about you, Chin? Who you got for in terms of draft winners?
I honestly had the Rockets too. I think like when you really look at, I think Cam Whitmore. I've seen a lot of videos on him more recent during this draft, and he just looks like such a complete player. Like his build, the way he like is so like fluid on the ball. Pause. Like I definitely think, yeah. I think I said pause the last pod too. but I just and then you look at Amen Thompson, and like I think in any other draft he is like possibly the number 1 pick as well. Like I think this draft like is honestly one of the stronger drafts that I've seen in the last couple of years. And I'm not just saying that because of recency bias, but like it's just generational talent amongst generational talent. Like at least at its core and like at the raw, like I guess like look of it, like I definitely think the top 4 players safely are all players that are going to like translate into being like up there in the NBA for sure. And I definitely think like even seeing Scoot, like because I was a believer that the Hornets would take Scoot just because of
BPA.
him being the best available player.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
I think I personally would have took Scoot Henderson at like 2, but it's a win for the Blazers. I think the Blazers win a lot in this draft mostly because they have the option now to see what they want to do with their future, because they have Scoot and not Brandon Miller. Not saying Brandon Miller's not on that level, but I think it's what they needed out of this draft. So
hey man, y'all try to take a boys trip
let's go
to Blazers game.
Hell yeah, man.
Blazers. Yo, I'd be down, man. Yo, I'm down, fellas. Yo, we talk.
100%.
Yo,
we gotta figure. We'll look into doing that. One more team I want to give some flowers to. I think is the Jazz.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I was really gonna tell
Taylor.
Yeah, that was a great draft.
You know what, Ruben? You take this one then.
No, I was just gonna say Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh. Like they scored on every selection of the draft.
Yeah, I mean Taylor Hendricks. That's I think the perfect running mate with Lowry. Able to guard multiple positions, stretches the floor, and I think with a guy like Walker Kessler, free safety kind of vibes. And then Keontae George, it's not a microwave in the making, a microwave in the waiting. Playing behind one of the best guys of that position, Jordan Clarkson, is going to be mainly beneficial. And, he's a big bad guy, so, I love that. Bryce Sensabaugh is another guy I think is similar to that, to where, microwave, but he's more of a wing. So I think, man, the Jazz are looking very dangerous, I think, and they could make a decent push this year even.
Yeah. I think these are really nice young players to add to that core of development. I gotta say, man, I think 5 to 10 years later, for even the next 3 or 4 years, I think we're gonna look back at this draft and say it was one of the deepest of all time. Because like I think from literally 1 to 25, or even Bryce Sensabaugh was taken at 28. I think everybody scored on an NBA player, at the very least, a rotational player. or I mean, and I think there are about 6 or 7 all NBA caliber guys in this draft. We're talking about
100%. Yeah.
first 3 selections. I think the Thompson twins, um, and then a bunch of these guys could also be that as well. But yeah, I think the top 5 picks were literally guarantees for great NBA players.
100%. All right, to end off, just a little quick hitter. If you want to give a little spiel, go ahead. Let's pick who are 3 like prospects that you guys are really, really looking forward to watching play.
Well, can we say outside of the first 3? Because I think those are pretty obvious.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like bit further down the board, or guys we haven't talked about yet.
For sure excited to see Keontae George, because I think like he's got, in terms of his shot profile and his 3-level scoring ability, like I think he's going to be so exciting to watch. I know he only shot, I think 37, 39% from the field this year in college, but I think that's going to change for the NBA game. Some guys' games don't necessarily translate well to the college level, but they take it to the NBA level because it's just a different kind of game. So I'm really excited to watch him. Obviously, Grady Dick. I think I'm excited to see Grady Dick play with Toronto. I think, again, best player available and fit. And Kobe Buffkin in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Really excited to see him pair out. I actually really wanted Kobe Buffkin on the Raptors as well. So, but yeah, the first 2 names, the other names I mentioned, Keontae George and Buffkin, were 2 guys I wanted for Toronto. So I'll be watching their careers pretty closely.
Good picks. What about you, Chin?
If I'm being honest with you guys, like I keep up with the draft like when it gets very close, but I'm like much more interested in, not to say like other players can't pan out, but I just the type of NBA fan I am, like I just wait for them to hit the floor. And so I haven't like I don't
that.
keep up with like college ball. And the only like when I see like people show up on like the algorithms, like that's when I'm like, okay, this person's gonna come to the league. Like I've been seeing Amen Thompson on my fucking Instagram feed for like a hot ass minute.
He's nasty.
So yeah, like I do think like I'm honestly just looking to like the top picks, and that's all I really like think my head translates right now. But I think that's just because of my bias and the way I've been watching basketball. So
August,
I'm gonna omit.
August.
I'm gonna
summer league.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, exactly. Like I think I'll like start to understand like who's gonna show up, but I think I'm gonna omit myself from anyone underneath the top 10 picks.
I respect that. Yeah. I respect the honesty. Yeah, for me, first one I'll mention, one of the top guys, Jarris Walker. You know, I think the defensive versatility, him and Miles Turner is gonna be a crazy solid duo. I think it's a true power forward. You know, I mean the Pacers were running Aaron Nesmith at times, but another guy, you know, throw out our Canadian brethren, Leonard Miller, man. Big wing. I think a duo of him and Jaden McDaniels, that could be hell for like any offensive players. Another guy.
I'm surprised he didn't. Sorry, I was
just
gonna say about Leonard Miller. I'm sorry that I'm surprised he didn't end up getting drafted late first round.
I was too, but I think he's in an amazing situation in Minnesota.
Yes.
I think especially in terms of the fact that they're very devoid of draft capital, they're gonna have to rely on guys like Leonard Miller to, you know, show up, and I think he's definitely more than capable of that. Another guy I like is Colby Jones. I think he got drafted initially by Boston, but now he's in Sacramento, if I believe. And I'm saying this based on the belief that he's in Sacramento, which I'm like 70% sure. But I think when you just look at that team, you know, you can never have too much guard play at times. And I think if you're looking for a guy like Colby Jones who could slot into that second unit alongside Malik Monk, you know, I think he's a much more viable offensive option than a guy like, say, Davion Mitchell. So I like the guard rotation at Sacramento. I think is looking very deep right now. You know, obviously you got De'Aaron Fox, you know, Malik Monk, Davion Mitchell. Now you're gonna get a guy like Colby Jones. You know, could be very nasty. But with
Can I add one more?
I'll go ahead, bro.
Can I add one more.
Yeah.
Hood Schifino, Jalen Hood Schifino.
Yeah. Goodbye, D'Lo.
Yeah, I mean they had a great draft, and Jalen Hood-Schifino is like, I'm so excited to watch him in the pick and roll with AD.
Oh yeah.
I think he's a maestro, obviously there. I'm really excited about that. Like, and then I think that the ability to add playmaking with LeBron obviously getting older. Like you saw how he deferred to Reeves. I think Jalen Hood-Schifino is one of those guys that can step in and contribute right away. I really like him. So I
Oh,
think the
yeah.
Lakers also had a really underrated draft.
Oh, Maxwell Lewis, I think could be a massive steal, but I just hope he gets some burn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which I think he will. But the Lakers are actually quite deep now since the trade, so it'll be interesting to see how they play out.
No doubt. All right, boys, y'all got any last things to add?
We love Dick.
100%. Kai Soto, Summer League MVP, coming soon, baby.
Yeah, on a measly 8 points and 4 rebounds and 2 assists.
No doubt. With that,
Disrespect.
stay safe, stay blessed. We'll see y'all soon.
We love Dick. Dick in the 6.
Ride that dick.